All right, people. After Amazon's web service almost completely crippled the internet last week, that, by the way, that's why the streams were taking so long to get going. We are back. Like I said, we've been picking up slowly, progressively since Stranger in a Strange Land crippled not only my original Lost Watch, but also almost crippled this session's Lost Watch. But we have been picking up. So, like I said, Trisha Tanaka is dead. Enter 7-7. Par Avian. We got that crazy reveal at the end of last week's episode where it's like, what? Jack's playing football with the others? What the hell's going on? And here we are, the midpoint of this season. And to be honest, one of the best episodes of the entire stretch. Man, I forgot just how good this episode was. And as I was saying to you before this stream gets going, this is a momentous occasion because we have reached the point in the show now where after next week's silliness, which was the Nikki and Paolo episode, Expose, which we'll get to the ridiculousness that happens in that episode next week because we really that might take up a whole hour in terms of how we're going to be breaking down and dissecting an episode that ultimately showed what the show could have been in a much lesser showrunner's hands. But this is, I mean, we get so much in this episode. I don't even know where to begin. Namely, first and foremost, we finally see the incident, the thing that ultimately set John Locke on the path that would lead him to the island. We finally saw what caused him to be paralyzed in the wheelchair to begin with. So, Luke, let's just start there. Like, what did you feel about that actual reveal itself? And more importantly, the thing that kicked off the flashbacks in this week's episode, that being Mike Ross himself, Patrick J. Adams.
I was like, whoa.
Being the one who inducts him in all these different cast members. First, it was Justin Chatwin from Shameless, is the dude who ruined his life by getting him kicked out of the compound. And now it's Mike Ross from Suits. All these different network TV stars of network TV's past coming into Lost.
Oh, that's why I recognize. I started watching Shameless, but then I stopped. I don't really. It's not my thing.
Early Shameless there too.
So that's where he was a bit familiar, and now we get Mike Ross in like one scene. I guess he got Suits like what, 5-6 years later?
It was like right around this time. Because this is 07, so yeah, it would have been like 4 or 5 years after this.
But yeah, like they kind of alluded to it in the beginning of the episode where Ben was like, "I know how you lost your legs to Locke." Obviously, that dynamic in this episode was just absolutely on fire.
It's the so like Locke and Ben, as if season 2 wasn't enough of an indication. This episode just proved that, like, oh, once Locke and Ben are back together, I'm like, oh, this is about to hit next level right here.
Yeah, like this is the show. This is what you guys need to keep building on. And then it just builds to now I know where Locke's father is from. He's one of the Christmas adventurers in one battle after another. He's the one that's just kind of there. He doesn't say anything in that basement scene.
It's just really noticeable for that wicked smile. And it was like, where do I know that guy from? And then you're like, oh shit, it's Locke's dad.
Yeah, and this is another episode of Locke keeps getting screwed over, but this time he actually tries to do something about it. He stops his dad from conning another woman, but that ends up. Yeah, he tries to, and then that ends up badly, and it ends up even worse for him. Like the one time he tried to do something, he gets screwed over the worst he has so far. So again, Locke just the most screwed over character on the whole show.
Yeah, Locke just cannot catch a break. It's funny. So I officially started reading,
which is why he's going boom in the last 3 episodes.
Exactly. It's why like he's like really like he's been on edge. Like I said, Locke ever since he woke up after the hatch implosion has really just been on a man on a mission. You know, like it's very prophetic words that he said in season 2 when he finally admitted, oh, I was wrong. Because throughout the back half of season 2, you had him kind of, you know, once again questioning like, okay, like you saw what a mess his life had been leading up to the island. And then you see him on the island and you're like, oh, this is a dude who was in a wheelchair and now the island has magically given him this ability to walk again. Then you had him going through a couple of troublesome steps because as we know, the island giveth and taketh. The island can give it, the island can take it away. But mostly, above all else, the island is as unpredictable as ever. And it's that very unpredictability that and rather lack of clarity, at least up until this point, that has led Locke to kind of where he is. Where ever since we've been wondering kind of what Locke has really been up to, what his motivation has been, you know, post the hatch implosion. You know, leading the quest to the hatch, claiming that he was interested in saving Jack, Kate, and Sawyer from the others and bringing them all back. So you've had all this stuff, but up until this point, like you can immediately tell there have been other characters that have been trying to clock him on this. Like Saeed clocked him on that, and then it turned out, in the episode right after Echo's death, and then it turned out no, it was just it was just that was actually what he was going to do. But sorry, well, my brain still wakes up here. But overall, like we've really kind of been in the dark as far as where what Locke's motivation and goal has been up until this point. And this episode, we finally kind of get it, because we finally, in the payoff after last week's episode of them seeing Jack playing football with the others, Locke is immediately like, okay, like I'm gonna send Kate and Saeed off on this side quest to go save Jack. When we finally realize it, you figure it out pretty quickly, and I feel like Russo was kind of the audience avatar too, because she just looks over and then she just immediately pieces out. She's like, okay, Jack's playing football with the others. Something's not right here. I'm out. I'm going to go explore this from over here. And then Locke is like, okay, Kate, Saeed, I'm going to have them do all like the busy work as far as like going to get Jack. And I'm going to go do what I really came here to do, which was my get back at Ben, because you got to assume that Locke has been like definitely feeling something in terms of like he's kind of mad that Ben got the one over on him, and also how Ben could potentially have more of a link to the island than him. And I think that's also part of what caused him to do a lot of the actions that he did in the back half of season 2 is the fact that he met someone who felt like they knew the island more than him. And now, ultimately, he is out to prove now that he is ultimately, and that caused him to like, start to doubt everything, start to doubt why he had been brought to the island, start to doubt why, whether he actually had a purpose. And now, after surviving the hatch implosion, he's out to prove to Ben, like, no, like I'm the dude that should be running things. And we finally see it when he has that fateful conversation with Ben when he meets up with him. He's like, no, he's like, you're a Philistine. You only pretend to care about the island. I'm the guy who actually gives a shit. And he shows, in a very, very apt on the nose metaphor. He's like, because you're the guy in the wheelchair, as they are constantly trading bars back and forth. Like I said, it's just Locke and Ben. Whenever you get those two in a room together, it is absolute next level stuff.
Yeah, he's accumulated this sort of philosophical stance of like, I am the avatar of this island. I am its main deity, if you will. That like I understand the island has blessed me the most, and you are not worthy of the island, if you will. And as they discuss how Ben is not healing as quickly as he would expect with the island's healing powers, if you will. So yeah, there's that whole discussion. Well, all the while, Locke is like trying to secure the island, if you will. He's trying to destroy all methods of leaving, because he finds out that Jack's going to leave in the submarine. He knows about the submarine from. I love how he says, "Your man, Mikhail."
Yeah, it's great.
And so again, he's gonna blow that up. That's gonna stop Jack from leaving the island. That's gonna stop him from reaching outside world or coming back. Not that he probably could even be able to come back. Not that, or he knows how to. So yeah, just a whole another half of a season to go after this explosion.
Yeah, like I said, it's a pretty big moment right here as well. The fact that once again, even though Jack and Locke have been separated for the vast majority of this season up until this point, I believe this is the first time that the two of them have seen each other in person at all since they originally left with Michael to go to the other side of the island. And like I said, but you kind of bring back the man of science, man of faith tropes there, where Locke is, oh my God, my brain is just, I'm exhausted right now. Where basically Locke is continuing with the whole like worship the island. The island has to be protected at all costs. And once he discovers that the others have a submarine and a way of like traveling back and forth from the mainland to the island, he's like that cannot be. That cannot be. Meanwhile, they've already secured passage for Jack in order to get back to the mainland. But I want to talk real quick, because we've been rightfully so complaining a lot about the flashbacks this season. And again, it goes back to the general viewing audience's thought process, because again, as much and as season 3 really did vastly improve over not only the first 6 episodes of the season, but really just over kind of the residual slowness and consistent buildup of mysteries. Season 3 did finally start to provide a lot of the payoffs of that as well. I've been reading Lost Back to the Island, the companion book that was written for the show a couple of years ago. And one of the things that was so interesting here is the fact that we talked about on Stranger in a Strangeland how that was the episode that showed that Lindelof and Hughes needed to put an end date on this, but the show was so successful at this point that this I didn't realize. So not only did they set them an end date, but they, like I said, in the compromise that they came to, they said, okay, you're doing 6 seasons and then you'll be done. This was by the time that they were in the process of doing renewals for season 3, like post season 3, right before the strike happened. But the thing that I didn't know that was a part of that deal is the fact that their final 3 seasons that they got after season 3, they got all those renewed in one sitting. Like, although they got like an immediate 3-season order. So like I need to make people understand just how rare and unlikely that is that ever happens. Like, I don't think anything like that has like ever happened since. Maybe I think the closest thing that there was to that was Game of Thrones getting renewed for its final 2 seasons. But even that one wasn't even really like, they were like, oh, it's a 1-season renewal with 13 episodes, but split up across like 2
Was
years.
there never like a Game of Thrones after like season 2? It's like, oh yeah, 3 more seasons.
No, I think it was just they kept getting renewed every season, I think. I believe. And that was adapted from books too. So that's the other difference as well. Like, that at least had source material to go off of. So even if it had gotten canceled, you would have at least still had the story. Well, at least up until Dance of Dragons. But this was completely original. But again, it really, really just shows like the power of Lost. And it's funny too, because there was another show around this time as well that was potentially lapping at Lost's heels, because this is also around the time where I didn't realize this either as well. Lost was starting to suffer a little bit of a ratings lapse here, which is part of the other reason why the creators were like, okay, we got to stop fucking around and like actually get this story, this story boat in order here. And so as a result, like, it really caused them to like hunker down and fucking focus up for this last second half of the season. Because like I said, from this point onward, the Nikki and Paolo episode next week aside, there are like no more fillers going through to next week. And kind of where that ties in is with the flashbacks as well, where he is. The vast majority of the flashbacks this season, one could argue, have been kind of pointless and haven't really added anything else to the characters that we didn't already know about. The Saeed one, I mean, it's more so similar to the season 2 flashbacks in terms of like they're coloring in like the extras, like extra areas for the characters we didn't necessarily know about, but a lot of them we didn't even necessarily need. This one, though, was really, really interesting because both the flashbacks and the stuff on the island are both working in tandem to both further Locke's character and really give us some interesting areas where the flashbacks start where, they're setting you up to think that he's in the wheelchair when he's, talking with the, with the therapist person or with the government person for like government assistance or something like that. And you could already tell that he's been through the ringer. And this is before the Patrick J. Adams character comes to talk to him, basically says like, hey, he's like, no solicitors. He's like, how many kidneys do you have? Just like a random question, basically. And it's something along the lines of like, yeah, my mom started seeing this guy. There was something about him that just felt kind of weird and off. So I ended up doing some research and I found out that he went by another name, Anthony Cooper, that you donated a kidney to him. So Locke finds this out. Locke confronts him, is basically like, yeah, you're going to leave these people be. And, or I'm going to call her, or I'm going to tell this woman and expose you for who you are. Next thing you know, Patrick J. Adams turns up dead, and he goes to confront his dad in a conveniently very highly placed building. And then next thing you know, he's like, "Go ahead, go and call that phone if you don't believe me." And then he's like, "Okay." And then right as he makes a phone call, boom, tackles him right out the window and knocks him down. And next thing you know, paralyzed. And so, like I said, that's what makes Locke's. So basically the reason why that's so interesting that we get probably the last, like, I would say, good flashback. We get like one more. I would say we get like 2 more solid flashbacks this season, because I will say the Juliet and Desmond flashbacks for the most part have been really good. Flashes Before Your Eyes was really, really good. But for the most part, the flashbacks here have been pretty pointless. And I like that this one, both on the island and off island, is kind of reflected in each other in terms of how it really is the bookend for Locke's journey, where we now understand what Locke's kind of end game is, which is ultimately he's like, okay, I've proven myself. I am now going to become the master of this island over you, Ben, who you're only claiming to be. But but say what you will about, but this is where the Ben Linus piece of this is, because really, I mean, all the stuff that's going on with Jack is mostly just plot mechanics in terms of like, okay, like Jack and Kate are finally having their final reunion. And this is also to the point where it's like the Kate and Jack Sawyer love triangle is it's just beyond annoying at this point. It's like, we get it. And like,
Yeah,
there's
we get it. Eventually, they will end
yeah,
up, but when they do, the show ends.
exactly.
That's the kind of a romantic tension that's like, okay,
It's funny
we can't
because
do this until the last 2 episodes, kind of thing.
it's funny because as I'm reading the book, there's so much insight and so many things that are like I wish that we talked about like in the previous episodes where this has happened, but I'm glad that we're talking them now. We're both Evangeline Lilly and Harold Perrineau, the actor who played Michael, both talked at length about, you know, kind of their frustrations with their character arcs on the show. Michael was not happy at the time. It's funny because at the time it was attributed to just him being written off not once but twice. And especially once they bring him back next season, which you'll see, they kind of shortchange him once again. But he was mostly talking about how the fact of it's like, you know, the portrayal of black men at the time. He was like, he really thought that like the idea at first of a single black man raising a son, you know, on a deserted island was an interesting idea that ultimately just kind of got written out. And eventually Lily also talked and expressed a lot of frustration about how after a pretty interesting backstory and intro, she ultimately was just relegated to eye candy and being, you know, being kind of stuck in the middle between Jack and Sawyer. And it was an interesting bit of criticism that I saw in one of these news articles. I can't remember which one. And remind me if I've said this before on the show, where basically because J.J. Abrams directed the pilot, J.J. Abrams was well known at this point for directing a certain type of female character, you know, the ones that were known, you know, for Felicity and Alias and such. But then obviously once he left and once Lindelof took over more of the reins, you know, Lindelof, the type of character that Kate was set up as in the heavily J.J. Abrams influenced first season didn't necessarily gel well with the types of stories and directions that Lindelof was more interested in telling in the later season. So I don't remember who it was that said this, but whoever did, props gets it for saying that Kate ultimately is a J.J. Abrams character stuck in a Damon Lindelof show. And for anybody who's seen Damon Lindelof's other properties and also J.J. Abrams properties and understanding the two diametrically different types of female characters that the two of them choose to work with, you understand kind of the issues and problems that then erupt ultimately with Kate as a character over a long period of time. So, but that's just the Kate piece of it. Going back to Locke real quick, and ultimately how Locke is really the embodiment of the show in and of itself. You ultimately see too that this is the ultimate fruition, like I said, of the man of science versus man of faith thing, where Locke in his attempt to, you know, protect the island at all costs, now that we know that that is once again his sole priority, is not taking into account and not really caring about other people's decisions. And once we see that, like, okay, Jack went out of his way to make this deal with Ben so that both him and Juliet could do it, because we know that he didn't do it for himself. He did it for Juliet, could get off the island. And now Locke has just blown that all to hell. But that's just from the outset. Because like I said, those are just like the two main driving pieces. Then we get into the Ben Linus of it all. And that's where it's like, oh, once again, like, Ben may be a Philistine, as Locke says. Ben may not necessarily have been like as chosen and as anointed and as in touch with the island as Locke is, but Ben is still a puppet master and a master manipulator if there ever was one.
He's definitely an opportunist. He sees this Locke. He's almost unhinged. He's on a collision course with the submarine, but he also needs Jack to stay here. He doesn't want to kill Jack because he's, as he said, that would be cheating. That would be against his word. That would make him look bad in front of his people, sort of thing. So it's very much a two birds, one stone kind of thing. Like I said, they don't have communication because they wiped that out in the season 2 finale. So again, I guess Ben wants to kind of protect or use the island as much as Locke does, because he has to heal. Like he's waiting for the island to do that, but the island, for whatever reason, isn't doing that for him right now. So
that's the other thing as well that comes as far as the differences between Locke and Ben. So not only obviously, yes, Ben not healing as fast, Ben may not necessarily have the same sort of connection to the island that Locke does. But the biggest difference to me too, and it's the reason why Ben is ultimately able to continuously get the drop on Locke over and over and over again, as we see, is because Locke is an optimist and Ben is a cynic, ultimately, at the end of the day. And a cynic is somebody who is always going to be looking for the edges, whereas the optimist is always going to be looking for the best in people. So it's very telling for me in the moment for Locke, where even though he takes Alex captive and uses her as a pawn in order to try and get Ben to do what he wants, uses her to go and get the C4 that's in Saeed's pack, when he brings her down to the sub, he apologizes to her, versus Ben is all about, like, even though Locke is able to figure out after the fact that once again he's been had, what's it called? Ben is still Ben is still able to continually, twist a knife and by revealing all these different ways and all these different possibilities. But it does also go to show that, like, again, the fact that Ben is bending over backwards this much in order to try and make sure that Locke, that he remains strong and that he remains decisive, goes to show that, oh, maybe he isn't as confident and as good of a leader to the others as we previously thought. Not to mention the fact also that we know for a fact from Mikhail from last episode that just because Ben is running the others does not mean that he's the guy in charge. And I'm just wondering, like, how long until Locke, Locke, I'm assuming has already figured that out and put that together. But I'm wondering how long it's going to be before Locke is able to use that in his advantage against Ben. Also, we got our next instance of Richard. What's it called in this episode, who we first saw in the Juliet episode. Like I said, another one that you're going to want to pay attention to because you're going to learn. We don't get like super in depth about his backstory until like a couple seasons, but you will see in a couple episodes like kind of what his trick, his secret, his like niche amongst the others is.
Yeah, just a lot of back and forth, like the Jack stuff. Like you said, Jack's the proactive character. He's the plot character essentially throughout the whole show. I guess Desmond's kind of taken that load on that part of the island while Jack's away, and then Locke is he's the sort of most development character, if you will, sort of the proactive and reactive, and just that again that dynamic man science math. Again, Jack and Locke is that's what the whole show is really about, and then Ben is like the between them. This almost like child of divorce, almost. I don't know, not quite to that level, but
yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see what you think of when we finally get Ben's backstory in a couple episodes from now. We'll hit that. I think that's either
he was born on the island. That's what we know. That's what he says, at least.
That's what he says, and as we know, Ben is a liar.
He's a charlatan.
He is a charlatan. He is a Philistine. He is very good at getting his way with people for obvious reasons. The other thing also, criminal underusage of Juliet in this episode, but that's because they're saving her for the next couple of weeks. So like I said, but we have one more big reveal at the end too, the titular man from Tallahassee, where after Ben has revealed his whole plan to Locke, the whole thing of it's like, yes, I wanted you to blow up the submarine. It's like, I couldn't do this with Jack, but I couldn't outright kill him. But then you come in and with your C4. And also, we got some great lines with we got a really, really great one-liner from Ben earlier on in the episode when he tells Tom to go and get the man from Tallahassee. And he's what is that, code for something? He's like, yes, John, it's code for there's a man in my closet with a gun to my temple, or something along the lines of like, maybe we should, it's like, maybe we should have a code for it. Like, it's just the one-liners that they drop on this show.
Or even later, it's like Locke asks him, how do you guys have electricity? Oh, we have 2 giant hamsters running on wheels.
About that.
Like, I would believe that. Like,
I honestly,
what we've seen on this island.
At this point, the show's run, I would believe that. But
and he also mentions like a magic box where anything is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be significant or not, but
yeah. Also, but like I said, that really covers the majority of the plot. Like I said, and the twist at the end beat that the man from Tallahassee is what's it called? Is Locke's dad himself, Anthony Cooper. The others have captured him and brought him to the island. For what nefarious purposes involving Locke will they have? Tune in next week, or in this case, in 2 weeks, because we gotta wait through the Nikki and Paolo episode next week first. Because of course they were like, oh, this is such classic network TV where they're like, we're gonna drop a massive cliffhanger bomb at the end of this episode, and then we're gonna make you wait 2 weeks for the payoff because we know we can do that because we know you're suckered in at this point. Classic network TV, but the one other thing that I wanted to talk about as well is shit. I literally just had this point and I just forgot it. Hold on, it'll come to me. Real quick, what did you think of the reveal at the end?
Well, they kind of like pretty much set it up. Like, okay, who else could it be? Like, who else have we seen in this episode that couldn't really been anything else? But now it's the point of like, okay, this is like the first step of Lost going a bit far-fetched. I'm like, okay, how are they gonna explain this one? So,
well, I mean, the thing is that we know that the others are capable of bringing people to the island at this point, so it's possible that they could have already brought him there like before the hatch implosion wiped out their communication. So just from a logistics standpoint, like we know that they're capable of doing this as well, and we're gonna see this like at a later point as well, like once we surpass this season. But The other thing that I wanted to say is this: is that I feel like we can have this discussion now, where we're at the point in the show where ultimately, while there are still more mysteries and there is still more lore and more iconography to be explored, by this point in the show's run, I feel like the general gist had pretty much been revealed, in the sense of where, at least as far as the island's lore and backstory, where you're like, okay, so you have these natives that were living on the island for God only knows how long. Then you had the Dharma Initiative that came in around the 70s, and their experiments were so far-reaching and were apparently so destructive to the island's habitat that the others then came in and wiped them out completely, and to the point where they were basically just making sure that nobody else would ever find the island again. And the only people that were then stumbled upon it was always through happenstance and accident, at least throughout it. So, and then everything else that happens ensues. And the island, like we've both discussed, is basically like this conduit to this weird mystical energy source that is what attracted Dharma there in the first place. Well, there is, like I said, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be revealed. We still don't know about the smoke monster and everything. By this point in the show's run, a lot of the mysteries had been revealed. So this is once again where I attribute to all those people who were like, oh, the show didn't tell you anything about the mysteries. To once again, I attribute by this point in the show's run, if you're still saying that, you just clearly just weren't paying attention, or you just don't remember anything,
Yeah.
So,
Or it's like you don't have to know absolutely everything. You
right,
don't need to know
exactly.
why exactly there's magnetic energy. Okay, there just is. Like we don't need to get into the specifics, which is my worry for Stranger Things, that they'll try to do this super detailed explanation of the upside down. I'm like, it's
Oh,
a
you already know.
parallel
Oh,
flip dimension.
you
Like
already know that's
that's
coming. You
that's
already
enough.
know that's coming.
Unless it's like something incredible that they've
Which,
had
listen,
cooking.
I can hope, but all I know is that this last season is literally going to be the make or break season for like not just the last season, but the show's whole run in general. In terms of like, all right, was this worth the decade-long effort that you all put into this?
Yeah, but back to Lost. Like most of the big mysteries, the island, the energy behind it, the sentience of the island. It's like,
Most of that has pretty
yeah,
much been answered
like it's
without
like
like,
now it's character and plot stuff. Like, how are they gonna
yeah,
get off the island? Like, obviously that's the main question. That's a question that's established
right,
in episode 1. Like, how
right.
will they get off the island? I'm guessing that they get off the island, but they have unfinished business and they have to get back somehow.
Well, I mean,
That's how I'd write it, at least.
what once again, your sleuthing is well ahead of the curve, because what I find so interesting, because I'm not going to go based off that point, because like I said, you pretty much figured out what the rest of the gist of the show is going to be. But what I find interesting, and once again showing in terms of Lost both being a product of its time, but also the result of it being released when it did, allowing for it to do ultimately what it was able to do, and ultimately have the reputation as one of these like great iconic TV shows. Because in another universe, you have it where Lost ultimately makes the next season all about them getting off the island and then just ends it there. It's like, okay, they're off the island, they're done. But instead of doing that, they go the direction that they go in season 4, which you'll see. And then we get 2 more seasons of absolute insanity, which again, we will get to that when we get to that. We still have a whole year's worth of recaps to get to. But like I said, it's that the diametric kind of opposition that's going to happen with this year, where we were literally recapping it every week so that we can hit our quota for the end of the year. A lot of episodes are slow. A lot of episodes don't necessarily add up. A lot of episodes are kind of trudging. A lot of them are filler. To next year, where we're going to be covering 3 seasons worth in the course of what feels like half the time. And every episode, we're just going to be speeding through so fast. There's going to be so much plot happening. There's going to be so much stuff happening that you're literally going to be like, is this even still the same show that we've been recapping for the last 2 years? So once again, but that is the magic of Lost, is even more so, I would say, than Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones' whole thing was Game of Thrones ultimately was a victim of changing format, was really more than anything else. Lost, what was so interesting is that because it was still airing, it was airing during a changing of era, the transition of the cable era over into like the early streaming era, like the early 2010s, which I call the second wave of prestige era.
Is that like House of Cards? I
Exactly.
remember
The
that
Game of
was like
Thrones, Breaking Bad,
big
Mad
one.
Men, House of Cards era. Absolutely. And because Lost was able to end itself before any of that led way into the streaming wars, it's once again continues to fascinate me that it was able to pull off what it pulled off when it pulled off on a network TV show. That to me is consistently the thing that I'm going to come back to is Lost, the miracle binge show that was made during the dying years of the network era. So yeah.
I'm kind of surprised it hasn't had like a resurgence of some sort. Like, I don't know. Maybe,
you know what's funny?
Maybe it's not time yet.
It has. Here's the thing. It's so funny that you say that because to me, I think it has, but just not in the ways that the conventional ways that we would expect it. Like everybody still talks about it, but the thing that, and this is a thing that even I wouldn't get because I was, I was not in the initial Lost fandom when it was first airing. Like when this show was like, this was arguably like the first TV show to generate a fandom. Like we were really still only around for like the latter era of Game of Thrones, which by then like the social media craze had like completely taken over. But like this was like when there are still not enough words to describe just how big this show was. When I say this was the biggest and most popular show on the air, it was a thing of where it's like the thing was such. There were already so many people that were so rabidly thirsting over every minute, every bit of Lost content that they could get their hands on. Like I said, if you want, like definitely go back and do your research with the interactive games, all the supplemental material that they were released at the time, the chat boards, which Cuse and Lindelof were actively monitoring. Like there are not enough words to describe just how so I think it was just collective exhaustion that like when it was over, everybody involved was just kind of like, we're done. And like, the fact that people like still flashback, like there's a reason why the fan reaction, all the extra behind the scenes stuff, and like because it was all part of the discourse because it was being reacted to in real time as opposed to after the fact, after the show had already ended. So I feel like that's why.
I'm sure there's some great video essays on the history of Lost, which I'll watch after we finish the show because we still got a lot of show to get to. We are past the halfway mark of episode count. But I'm pretty
like
sure
that,
we are.
Something like that, yeah. But like I said, it's we're getting up there. And like I said, it literally this is to the point in the show where like there's a reason why like once I got to this point in the show, I would like did not stop until I had binged through like the final season. Like it was because this is like early 2020 that I'm at now. Like this is even pre-pandemic or like maybe during the early days of pandemic. And like I hit this point I think it was this episode. I hit this point in season 3. I'd finally resumed it after I graduated college, and I just could not stop watching. I'm like, I was all in at this point.
Yeah.
So
because it was always a show that like my mom watched it in like 2014 or something. She always told me to watch it. I'm like, I'll watch it eventually. Right. I know that if I did watch it like before we started, it would have been done in a week.
Yeah,
absolutely.
With the modern binge habits. Yeah.
Looking at how it happens it would be like one summer bang.
Yeah,
that thing. It's like the summer that I watched Game of Thrones. I watched.
Yep.
I remember it was like I watched a full night of Game of Thrones. Like the birds were chirping. Like right.
Oh shit! I probably should have slept.
I'm in like season 4. Like the sun's coming up. This was. I watched it when season 7 came out. Like that's what I watched it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when everybody was doing all of their rewatches of the show because like they had said that like this is going to be the penultimate season. So I feel like that's what. And there had been enough of the show by this point. It's like okay, we can binge all of it, because it had been long enough since season 1 that it's like oh yeah, what did happen in season 1? So it was that sort of a thing. But
now people are doing that with Stranger Things. So
oh my god.
There's three seasons between.
Our whole Thanksgiving episode is not just going to be recapping those first 4 episodes, but also like the effects that Stranger Things have had in the streaming era, and really how it low-key that Stranger Things may be the reason why the streaming era is like dying now, and why basically Taylor Sheridan essentially had to come in and clean it up, and like all the bad things that Stranger Things inspired. Also the fact that like I don't know, like that Stranger Things, and like when we wrap this year is going to be such like a come full circle moment because what's it called? Because that's the thing that started the Talkin TV podcast. So it's gonna be really interesting. So
we're gonna do it on the New Year's Eve.
Oh man, well, when we wrap the show, yeah, probably. It's very possible that we might do that then. But what was I just gonna say? Yeah. Oh yeah, did you watch House of Dynamite this past weekend?
I did. I was reminded of the season 2 first episodes of Lost, where I'm seeing the same thing 3 times from 3 different perspectives. Like the influence of Lost is ever
everywhere. It's everywhere, man. Yeah, it had been so long since I saw Catherine Bigelow movie that I'm like, wow. I remember when this movie would have gone straight to theaters, and this movie would have gotten such bad reviews, like such bad reviews if it had went to theaters. But on streaming, I'm like, it's fine, it's fun. It killed 2 hours on a Saturday. I didn't really take anything away from it. Rebecca Ferguson's accent is atrocious.
Yeah, I was like,
the worst American accent. I'm like, girl, you are better than this. Like, what is happening?
Just stick to the proto-British stuff, Rebecca. Just like
exactly. But but it was good. It was fun. I liked it.
I'd say the first act is like perfect.
Yeah, the first act, you're like, whoa, what's happening here? But then once it like repeats, and I'm like, oh, you're just seeing the same shit from like different characters' perspectives.
Yeah.
And you never actually see like the missiles hit or like any widespread fall. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you're just playing the safe route. You're not actually showing anything interesting. You're just showing like the buildup to the thing and just using that. You're taking an early 2000s approach.
Yeah, wait, okay. I have to get a book.
Oh, I can't wait to see this. Oh, this is going to be awesome.
So this is nuclear war scenario. came out last year, I think, and Villeneuve is gonna make this into a movie eventually after he does.
Oh, that's the nuclear thing that he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is the first 20 minutes of House of Dynamite and everything after.
Okay.
So this is like both sides launch, and all the like what happens if it did happen. It's not just.
Because you're right. Because after that first third, when the missiles like finally make impact, you're like, oh shit, okay, and then it switches back to the beginning, and I'm like, what? I'm like, we're just doing it from like, but we already saw these guys, and then it does it again, but with Idris Elba, and you're like, because by halfway through it, the fact that they kept Idris Elba as the president like on the back burner the whole time. That's when I figured it out. I'm like, oh my God, they're just going to do the fucking rotate back to the beginning. And I'm like, of course they're not going to show anything, which is crazy. Because again, Catherine Bigelow has not made a movie in 8 years since Detroit, which was a movie that I really liked when it came out. And in hindsight, have not liked as much. So we will see. This was being slated to like get nominated for a bunch of stuff. And now I'm like, this is not getting nominated for jack shit this year. Not at all.
Maybe like, I don't know, editing. Like it was edited pretty well.
It was edited pretty well, sure. But
if you can find this, you can read it in like a day or two.
Okay.
It's like 200 something pages.
Got it. Well, because I also still have to finish Ghost of Hiroshima as well, since Cameron, we know, regardless, he's taking a break in between this Avatar Fire and Ash and this one. So he's probably going to film that and release that sometime in between before Avatar 4 comes out, if he even chooses to do Avatar 4. But with that being said, Luke, thank you for joining me once again for another episode of Talkin' Lost. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. I'm kind of switching hobbies every now and then. Now I'm working on my fantasy trilogy. Just like throwing out ideas. It's like an amalgamation of a bunch of things that I like. I'm sure I'll share it with you. Yes,
I gotta get you on a call with Eli when we do our little writers retreat. And of course, you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talk TV Podcast across all platforms. We will see you guys next week for the Nikki and Paolo episode expose. And as always, people, watch more fucking movies and get lost. We'll see you guys next time.